This video is part 3 of how to secure data with Core. Part 1 and 2 talked about proactive forensics and declarative auditing. This time we're going to talk about anomaly analysis. To explain anomaly analysis, we first explain that there are two kinds of repositories in Core. There's the compliance repository, used by declarative auditing, and there's a security repository, used by proactive forensics. The security repository is what we're going to talk about today. The security repository always records everything that happens in the database. And proactive forensic is a graphical tool to help us investigate what's in the security repository. Anomaly analysis is an engine that analyzes the activity in the security repository to find changes in the activity. So what does it mean to analyze? With the anomaly analysis engine, you can compare what happened today to the last week, or the last month, or the last 3 months, or the last year. By comparing what happened in the past, which is what we call the reference time, to what happened today, we can find changes in the activity. So what kind of differences can we detect between the reference time and today? There are 4 main categories. The first one is something new. A simple example is a new user that we see in the database, or a program, or an IP address, maybe a new combination of user program and IP address. Those kind of differences are difference in the activity source. And we can also look at changes in the activity itself. For example, a new SQL somewhere in the database. Or we can focus down to a new SQL from a particular user, a particular program. We can also look at the content of the SQL, so a new SQL touching a sensitive table, for example. Another example is looking for a change in the application activity profile. That is a very powerful way to find SQL injection attack. Because SQL injection will always change the SQL construct. That's always going to trigger this anomaly. Actually, any change in the application activity profile will trigger this anomaly. Other than something new, we can also look at something that happens both now and in the past. It happens now more. For example, a SQL that runs more frequently, or a user that runs more activity, or a program that does that. In addition to the frequency of SQLs, we can also look at the amount of rows that were accessed. So we can look for SQL that's accessing more data than now than in the past, or user that's doing that, or program that's doing that, or a combination of a user and program that's accessing more data. The third kind of change that we can look for between now and in the past is time of day. So we can look for a user that's active at a different time of day than usual, program, an IP that's active at a different time of day, a SQL that usually runs one time and today runs during a different time. In addition to comparison, the anomaly engine can look for other kind of problems. For example, a user that's connecting from 2 different machines, or a machine that has 2 different users connecting from. Now that we understand more about anomalies, let's try to understand how that fits into our database security study. There are several benefits to anomalies. The first and most important is that it can apply to any volume of activity. We can run anomalies on all the database activity, or on all the application activity. These are very large volume of activity that are impossible to secure in any other way. Unlike declarative auditing, that could secure activity that is high risk and low volume, anomaly is not limited by volume. The second important thing with anomalies is that they can notice something that the person wouldn't notice. For example, we can create a declarative auditing report on all the sessions in the database. The person reviewing that report will see all the users, programs, and IPs that connect. But they might not notice that a particular user and program is connecting from a different IP to them. This is something that will pop out very easily in anomalies. The third benefit for anomalies is that they work very well as an alert. Unlike a report that you need to review, an alert only requires your attention when something suspicious happens. And that means that you can deploy a lot more anomalies than you can create reports. But anomalies also have a limitation. It's a machine looking for differences that you told it to look for. But it's not a human being. It will not notice something odd, something unusual. And this is where proactive forensics and declarative auditing come into play. By combining anomalies, proactive forensics, and declarative auditing, we can get the best of both worlds. We can get machine looking for differences, and we can get people looking at reports and looking at activities. For example, we can use proactive forensics to look at who's connecting to our database. We can use session reporting and declarative auditing to get a report on sessions that connected. We can also use anomalies in order to identify a difference in who connected to our database. These are 3 different methods to control sessions. Another example is sensitive table access. We can use anomalies to identify a new SQL touching a sensitive table. That is something we might want to know about. We can also use declarative auditing to monitor subsets of sensitive table access. Sensitive table access by DBAs, sensitive programs, and so on. We can also use proactive forensics to investigate sensitive table access. These are again 3 different ways to monitor sensitive table access. Anomalies are the 3rd piece of the core functionality of Core Audit. As I mentioned in the first video, Core Audit has a lot of other capabilities like form for values, snapshots, dynamic masking, SQL blocking, and more. But if we use these 3 core capabilities in proactive forensics, declarative auditing, and anomaly analysis, we will have a very good security posture and very good control about what's happening inside our databases. If you have questions or want to know more, email me or leave a message in the comments.